I am on a mission to play every single Kamen Rider game that I can find. 1 year ago, I asked my Discord server for help in deciding my next long-form content project. It was between playing every single game or reading every single sequel novel. In the end, the games won, and I have been on a journey of streaming every single week in order to achieve this goal. Our first game on the list that we'll be covering today is Kamen Rider Black Taiketsu Shadow Moon, a side-scrolling beat-em-up from 1988 for the Famicom. This actually isn't the first Kamen Rider game ever made though, as there was one prior simply called Kamen Rider for the Fujitsu FM7 computer. But we aren't going to get too into that because this is less of a documentation of all Rider games ever made and more of a review series. Plus, that game is essentially lost media as of now. The Kamen Rider Black game consists of you going through 6 different stages where you get absolutely pelted with various monsters. Actually they're called mutants? Yeah, whatever bro. Projectiles, and random bullshit that all serve to make your life harder as you try to reach the final stage, where you face off against the infamous Shadow Moon. You can punch, you can kick, you can chop. I guess you can also do flips alongside powered up versions of these attacks, which cost you health. Never figured out how to do those in my playthrough. You can also use the select button to see boss stats and vital spots, or even take down their health at the cost of yours. But again, I never really figured out how to do that during my run either. I managed to open that menu once and never again. As a result, my playthrough of this was mostly trial and error and a lot of cheese. For the most part, each stage has 3 sub-bosses and 1 final stage boss. If you die at any point in time before defeating the final stage boss, you have to go back to the beginning of the stage you're currently on. It will only save your progress after you clear the final boss stage. I may or may not have started save scumming near the end though, due to some very frustrating bosses. As you'll see, this game is basically a Souls-like in the way you will constantly die to the most comically random stuff, and all you can do is get up and try again. Whoa, that's low-key the spirit of Kamen Rider itself. Stage 1 drops us into a cityscape littered with the occasional spider mob, a hint to the first sub-boss. They spew out these projectiles in front of them, but you can just hit them to negate any damage, and the spiders themselves die in 1 hit. The spider mutant boss fight is framed as a double boss situation, but they both share the same health bar. A very simple and easy fight. Just wait for them to get off the ceiling, avoid the jump attack and projectiles, hit them until they explode and die. The lead up to the leopard mutant boss is having to navigate past these wild leopards charging at you as you try to make it to the room. Another simple fight. Just be able to predict or be within the vicinity of where the leopard mutant lands as it continuously jumps back and forth. After you hit it, it will start glowing, and that's your sign to jump up to avoid an immediate follow-up attack. Also be aware that it can't attack you midair. Rinse and repeat until dead. As you traverse this green jelly room, you get ambushed by one of the high priests. This will be a recurring thing throughout the stages, and get juggled around by silkworm and moth mobs. The boss fight is, again, pretty simple and easy to grasp. The silkworm mutant will keep spewing projectiles in front of it, so just get behind it and hit it really hard until we get to our first stage boss, and it's honestly just an easier version of the leopard mutant fight. It will keep jumping back and forth, except this time it is much more predictable and easy to avoid, and you just have to figure out the timing and spacing for you to rider kick that thing into oblivion. We get to our first bike stage, wherein we must traverse and fight while riding Battle Hopper, complete with a setting that looks like it came straight out of someone's vaporwave edit. This is where I started to truly experience the struggles of movement within this game, as you deal with random boulders in your way, patches of road that slow you down to a nearly complete stop, random lizards raining from the sky, and the pain of having to see Kotaro absolutely wipe out on his bike if you don't properly clear ledges. This guy was honestly a pushover once you got the timing right. With the added speed from being on Battle Hopper, you can easily avoid his erratic helicopter spin attack, which will do numbers on your health if you get caught in it and are stun locked. Or you can just straight up prevent him from ever doing it in the first place. More of the same scenery is going on as we approach this next boss. Now, this is where the bosses actually start to get quite annoying. This guy is fast, has way more attack range than you, jumps, and will hit you midair. And the most important part is that he can turn way faster than you. If you aren't facing the right direction in this game, you can be totally fucked because your hit isn't going to register. And with these bike levels specifically, it is so much worse because it already takes Kotaro 2 goddamn business days to turn around properly as it is. But the bike can lose momentum and just completely stop you in your tracks if you aren't smart enough to use your available space. Believe me, I defeated this guy on my first try, but any other time I had to face him on a run back to the final stage boss, he was an absolute menace to me. Our next boss is pretty similar in design, although this time it attacks in the form of shooting projectiles in between its jumps. However, it's actually quite vulnerable while jumping. My method was to just jump over its projectiles when I could and punch it straight in the face and get it stuck in a combo, or ram into it with my bike either during its jump animation or right after it landed. It sounds easy when I'm advising this, but just know that I died to this guy quite a few times during my run. The Rhinoceros Mutant was honestly quite intimidating on my first attempt. Once you hit it, it will start charging up to bulldoze its way across the screen at incredible speeds and very little room for error. This was the first time I died in this stage, and it would lead to many, many more deaths. But then I finally did it. I understood the tech. I just needed to wait my turn, stay in the corner. If I had to come out of it to attack, then I needed to get my ass straight back in there before he started his ramming attack. Time my jumps properly to avoid it, and barely, just barely. Oh my god, I did it. Just barely. But I won't have to do stage 2 ever again. We finally get to the next stage, aka Flying Enemy Hell, complete with a new forest environment that toes the line between eye bleeding and aesthetic at times. We get eagles thrown at us as we make our way towards the big bad, but they're easily one-shotted out of existence. This fight is somewhat a return to simplicity, as there's not much going on with it outside of the same routine. Eagle Mutant flies back and forth, swoops down to pick you up, and as long as you're facing the right direction and hit it at the correct time, you can avoid getting grabbed and combo it before it can recover and fly back into the sky. One of the more annoying transition scenes to the next boss fight, there are tons of these little cicadas flying around which can hit you from underneath the floor when you're unable to hit them back. Punching these little guys crawling on the ground will also spawn a cicada on its death, so if you go out of your way to kill them to clear your path, just remember to always punch twice in a row. This sub-boss was another annoying one to deal with, costing me many lives and confusing me to no end until I figured out my preferred method of cheese. This guy is insanely fast, flies, and has long range. If he's on the ground, he just goes back and forth stabbing you senseless with his long-ass nose. If he gets back up into the air, you can't even jump up and try to chop him because he will just start doing the same thing before your jump even registers. If you wait for him to slowly come to the ground, he just stabs straight down into you. I was getting so frustrated at trying to figure out what my approach to this should even be that I started looking at speed runs and deathless runs of this game to understand. It didn't exactly help though, because for some reason, all of the footage I saw showed the cicada mutant mostly staying towards the ground and easily able to be stun-locked into a combo from there. That was not my experience at all, and I was starting to believe that maybe my copy of the game was just rigged against me. 10 tries later, I finally figured out the method. If that little freak wanted to stay up in the sky so badly, then fine. I just used that against him. I found out that I could just bait him into doing his downward attack, and if the spacing was right and I punched him at just the right time, I'd be free to keep doing that until he was dead. I then promptly died due to these annoying bees flying around, which move around like they're from a Smiling Friends bit. We finally make it to the boss room, and while slightly difficult, it's way better than the cicada fight. Another flying boss, except this time we are graced with a very predictable and slow flight pattern, minimal projectiles, which can be kicked to negate the damage, and an overall easy win as we simply wait for the bee mutant to land to get in some free hits until it dies. Okay, looking back on this, the tortoise fight is quite literally just a reskinned version of the rhinoceros fight. It's generally the same formula. Stay in the corner. If you need to get out of the corner to hit the boss, then immediately run back into the corner. Boss charges up and then flies back and forth across the screen. Avoid getting hit, and then just repeat the process until dead. The only big difference in this fight is that if the tortoise is facing away from you and you try to hit it on its shell, it won't do any damage. But all you need to do is just avoid dying and hope that when it stops spinning in the air, it lands facing towards you. Somehow this took me an entire hour to figure out. But finally, on my last try before I ended stream that day, after I said just one more attempt and then I'm done, I did it.
my god.
Another bike level, another stage with relaxing and comforting scenery, until they start throwing more mobs at you and placing ledges at the most inconvenient places. This boss is another annoying one, insanely fast, very tight timing windows for when you can actually attack it, constant projectiles, and mostly just a lot of going back and forth chasing it down on your bike. Once you get the timing down of being sure to punch him just as he jumps up above the ground, it becomes easier. But it's always an active struggle to consistently do it. If you're lucky and get the guy to loop back into the same corner over and over again, you'll have a better time. But it can still break out of it if you mess up the distance or miss your attack window. We move from ground level and hop straight into the sea while still on Battle Hopper, which prompted me to ask chat,
I haven't watched Black. Is this accurate? Like, can you do this?
the obligatory water level, complete with cute little jellyfish, anemone, and crabs that spew not so cute bubbles, which, unlike the other projectiles we've seen before, cannot be negated by punching through them. I immediately died 1 second into my first attempt on the boss, as I barely had any health going into the fight. Subsequent attempts at the dogfish proved it to be more of the same in the ever-growing list of annoying, fast bosses that move back and forth constantly. Except this time, there's the added unavoidable bubble projectiles that spew from it. 12 tries later, we finally did it. Through a combination of smashing my bike into it and punching, we finally overcame the dogfish. We move on to the most interesting level design of this entire game, which looks like it was inspired by Minesweeper. There are so many patterns and little details going on that my vision became blurred and my eyes started to glaze over all of the crabs, which sometimes blend right into the scenery. I died on my first try of the crab mutant fight, but he honestly seems like a walk in the park, just looking flashy with his fast jumps and the singular projectile that he throws, but he's easily open to punches and can be comboed. This was the part where I started to save scum, as I found out that most of the time I wouldn't even make it to fighting this guy with even half of my health, due to all of the random mobs in my way whittling my health down. I started getting tired and tried to take an Uma Musume break to do my dailies. Alas, I am a streaming noob and I did not have Steam and Streamlabs properly set up to not completely throttle my GPU when both of them were running. And thus, I almost completely crashed my stream, didn't get my Uma break, and caused the next half hour of my stream to become laggy as hell for my viewers. 8 tries later, I just barely did it. I didn't even seem that happy to accomplish it, I was just glad it was over. This is where the stage progression formula that we've gotten used to starts to change. Instead of having a final boss for stage 4, we move directly into stage 5, which is a back-to-back-to-back boss fight with the 3 high priests, or evil lords as the game labels them. More annoying flying enemies, at least this time, the projectiles are the ones that you can hit. You probably won't be able to though, since Bishum is pretty fast and choppy in her movements. And honestly, it isn't really worth it since they can just be jumped over. This fight is mostly solved with a combination of flying chops when she's in the air and kicks when she's low to the ground. As long as you can get used to her movement, then you're good to go, even if you get hit a few times. Darm is much more annoying and hates people with epilepsy. Funnily enough, he was the one that I had the most trouble with. TLDR, hit him before he hits you. If you see that hand go up, you better be close and ready to hurt him to cancel his incoming attack, because there is no way of avoiding it once it starts. You need to learn to not waste any of your movement or time. Go all in only once you're sure he's about to strike. Bottom is kinda just Bishum on crack sprinkled with a little bit of the insta-combo shenanigans of Daram. He throws out a lot more projectiles than Bishum and combines that with straight up freezing time to throw said projectiles straight into your path and almost guarantee that they hit you every time. Approach this fight with the same attack first mindset and hope that you can get him into a flying loop where you can just continually chop him in the head until he goes down. We finally make it to the last stage, the fated legendary battle with Shadow Moon. At this point in the stream, everybody left except one person, and honestly, that is so fitting for how the fight goes down. You get introduced to the fight with another complimentary flashbang cutscene, and immediately get thrown into the fight once Shadow Moon emerges. I almost didn't realize that the fight even started, considering Black nearly blends in with the background here. You only get one chance at this fight, and whether or not you win determines whether you get the bad ending or the good ending. I went into it expecting the worst, but just watch.
Am I actually gonna win the fight like this? Interesting. Interesting. This is the end? What an ending to this game. This playthrough, actually. To be continued. Am I supposed to press something?
Yeah, that wasn't very exciting. I went back into my save to lose on purpose and see what the bad ending was like, just to see if it was worth watching.
The Earth was knocked down to Gorgum. I mean, I guess.
Yep, that's it. Overall, I think that this game is definitely a one and done experience for me. It's an old game with janky controls and a pretty repetitive gameplay loop. Combine that with a pretty underwhelming ending, and it's something I wouldn't exactly go out of my way to recommend unless you're like me and you like experiencing these little pieces of Kamen Rider history regardless of these things. Here are my rankings for the game overall. I don't exactly have a formula for this in mind when I make these, mostly just going off of my own opinions at the time of writing the script. I try to be fair and keep in mind the specific era the game was made in. Gameplay gets a 2.5 out of 5 due to being serviceable, apart from the controls not being the best. I did find it kind of fun figuring out what strategy to use against the bosses and slowly getting better at predicting things. But the repetitiveness and jankiness eventually got to me, and it was enough to push it towards the lower end of scores. The difficulty is a 3.5, since the only notably difficult parts were fighting with whether you could get Black to turn around in time to hit enemies, figuring out the boss attack patterns, and hoping you wouldn't unluckily get caught up in some random attack chain that stuns you and absolutely destroys your health. But I got to a point where I was able to play pretty mindlessly while still reading my stream chat and constantly talking. Visuals get a 3.5 for me. I absolutely love pixel art, and this game has some very nice art for the characters, mobs, and stages. I took points off for the occasional god-awful level design that straight up strained my eyes at the sight of it, and the fact that you should absolutely not play this game if you have epilepsy or any sort of sensitivity to lights. Music gets a 3.5 as it was pretty decent for the most part, enough to not make me go crazy hearing it on loop for a total of 8 hours. There are some parts where it gets annoyingly loud and odd sounding, but again, it was serviceable overall. Finally, I give replayability a 2.5 out of 5. As I said, this was a one and done experience for me. I will probably never play this game again, and I can't really imagine a timeline where I get bored enough to think, Wow, I'm so bored. You know what I could really go for right now? Another playthrough of Kamen Rider Black, Taiketsu Shadow Moon. So, should you play it? If you hate yourself, then yeah, go for it.
Respectfully, as a friend, do you hate yourself or something? Um, you could say that.